Hey everyone, Graffiti Wars 2 Kickstarter. Thank you everybody for being on my team for accountability and community. Here's my next video newsletter. Thought I'd show you what I'm up to. I'm going to share this. Get on this. So here is Graffiti Wars. And so this is the book where I'm at in the whole process. And I'm using a program called InDesign, which intimately connects to Photoshop. And have you seen before? It's digital art, drawing, sketches, paintings, a whole variety of stuff in between. So this is when you open up the book, this is at the moment the first page. And it's a quote by James Hillman from A Terrible Love of War. We're not going into war in the name of peace as deceitful rhetoric so often declares, but rather for war's own sake, to understand the madness of its love. And here are some of the characters, right? We've got the tugboat, and there's the beast, and a helicopter, and a whale floating in the sky, and this prayer wheel that's about war. So I'm using this Buddhist kind of prayer thing in the whole story. The last time I talked about the submarine temple where it's all prayer wheels. And so I actually have one of these prayer wheels in my studio right now in Oakland. It's solar powered, and I wrote on it, "Bless the war dead," and it's been spinning every day for the last 6 or 8 years. So even right now, as I'm writing this in Oakland, this prayer wheel is spinning. And there's something about that that feels probably more important than everything. And it's one of those things that it's not tangible, but I just have this sense of it. So then it goes into the first page, what I've talked to before is, this is where we see the god of war, maybe not even knowing what it is, but, he's so well fortified, like it's mythological to have a helicopter sitting on your head, or a jet, or tanks, or a ship, or as part of your body. And then when we actually see the god of war in this second book, we see that he's not like that. He's enslaved by men, power, and money, and he's an addict, and he's obese, and he's really an artist, and he's being forced to make weapons of war using his creativity that way. And then here's my QR code for the music that goes along with it, the introduction, the ISBN numbers, all these things. When I publish it, I actually probably won't even publish it till next year. It's close. I mean, it's close to getting worked on, but it's not there yet. So, the next book is the next page. We get into the graffiti warehouse where there's ghosts and stuff. It says, especially needed is not more specialist inquiring into past wars and future wars, but rather an archetypal psychology, the myths, philosophy, and theology of war's deepest mind. So that's really what this book is about. It's about, back to James Hillman, it's about imagining war differently. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm working on like behind the scenes to see if I can help, continue to liberate the creative spirit on this planet, and that would directly relate to war. So this is the recap from book one, and I'm just going to kind of scan through. I actually have art on every single page, and the stories is already written. And things like this is a combination. I'll still work on it. So like these are my photographs, but this is a clip art piece from somebody else. And so I'll go back in there and redraw that, or paint it, or do something that makes it feel like that it's my piece of art. And here too is, this is Birde, and she's out photographing out there on the base in Alameda. This story takes place in a decommissioned military airbase. And I just have a placeholder art. So I'll redo this. I'll probably keep it as a kind of a silhouette. Telling a story to me is about, implying, or as long as I get some of the character essences, then you're going to still know who it is. And so Birde actually has one of her big things is that she's got a feather. She's got a feather on her earring. And whereas when we see Hiro, he has a baseball hat and he's wearing overalls. So as long as I can get that in artwork somewhere, then I or we know um, which character it is. So here too is some clip art, and I'll go back in and change it. And these are photographs that I've taken from the shipyards in the Oakland port, where a bunch of the story takes place. So again, this is a placeholder art. This is clip art from somebody, and I will just go ahead and redo it enough that it looks and feels like my artwork. And in the whole piece are graffiti pieces mixed in throughout the whole thing. This is actually one of my graffiti pieces, but you'll see there's lots of other people's graffiti pieces like in here, or like when she's out photographing, like, so I've got a girl with the camera, and this might be close enough to just leave it as is. And then this is in the story, she's talking about this. She comes across some old graffiti art by a legendary graffiti artist named Dream, who I actually met a long time ago. And Dream was killed a long time ago. So then I'm writing it where you see the music, and then you have the dialogue. I'm writing it as a screenplay. And so, she's out on the base photographing. There's this scene where this airplane kind of goes by, and it lands, and stuff happens. This beast comes out and goes after her. I will redo this page, but it's got some of the essence of it. And when I'm doing a book, I have to always remember about the gutter. Like, what am I going to lose in the middle, and what will follow through? So this page, it's okay for the moment, but it needs work. So some of the pages are like, oh, I could probably leave this as is. So here's this scene where the whole thing explodes around the airplane, and there's text, and then it basically, the scene blows up, and Birde gets caught up in time, and she becomes a time traveler through that. And it says fade to black. I need to change that around. And then all of a sudden there's another scene. So she's in another scene. And there's the soundtrack. This is actually a rainbow from out here where I live. So then this is a whole scene where a lot of the story takes place on this. It's like the ocean water has gone out and it's just all wet sand. And so that's where one of the main parts of the story takes place, in this nowhere, no man's land. And I'm definitely still working on this page. You can see it's all hacked up, and I'm trying to do a drawing of her. And so I'll keep working on this. I was wondering about hand lettering. And then these are, I snuck on this shipyard and started photographing these tugboats, and that's where I saw these huge propellers, and it made me think that these tugboats were actually spaceships. And that's part of this whole, that's how I got some of this idea. Helicopters come in. I might have taken this photograph out in Alameda on the USS Hornet, the aircraft carrier. And then I flipped it upside down, put graffiti on it, put lettering on it, put text in the story. So one of the characters is a man that I've described already. His name's Bernie, and in real life his name's Troy, and he is a homeless man who I befriended and knew for a couple years. He lived in a bus stop between my house and the studio. And so I might leave it like this, or in the story then I do some of these drawings, and I might do it as both, or I'm still not figuring out. Like, I really like this drawing where I just hand drew it, and I did it really loose and light. And same with Birde. It's like trying to get a pretty woman in the same kind of over and over and over is one of my biggest challenges. So this page will get totally worked on. This is some of the graffiti that I photographed, and I will redo this so you can see it, where there's a plank and they walking up into this big ship that's just sitting on the ground. and this dog shows up, and she ends up finding some of her graffiti on this ship, and it's confusing, and he's the one that kind of gives a lot of information to the whole back end of the story in their conversations. And then it cuts to the scene where this is the military hospital that I photographed and went into and saw some of the amazing stuff. And we go back to meeting Hiro, because in the first book, Birde has sent Hiro back into time, and she's actually sent him back into a psych hospital where he's got a studio, unlimited studio time, and to protect him from the beast, or the god of war, who's trying to find both of these characters. So here I recently photographed my son-in-law, future, and then what I do is I put tracing paper over top of the photograph, and I draw it really quickly, and then I pull out my pen or a watercolor brush, and then I get these watercolor drawings. And that's what I was going for. And there's textures, there's text, there's drawing. So in this thing, I went back to all my old sketchbooks and pulled out all the drawings that I went in there. I photographed my hand, I drew over top of it. It's scene after scene. So here he's in the psych hospital, and this is where, in this part of the second book, you realize that when he draws a picture, we enter through the picture and we move into the scene. So here he's drawing a picture of Garuda and the tugboat, which is called Z4. And then all of a sudden we're in the scene. And this is the scene that I've shared before where, no, I haven't. So, there's things happening. We get a taste of what war is about. There's a whole funny scene here where the whale pushes the tug and Hiro into the sand to get rid of their heat signatures. And this is my son-in-law. I haven't finished. I won't use this, but it's a placeholder. So it gives me an idea of okay, what expression am I going for? And can I use any of this? And can I hand redraw it? So doing that. And then I came across the kind of a question, which was, how do I go from this scene to another scene that's totally different? Like go back to where Birde and Bernie are actually talking. And literally, I actually asked ChatGPT, how do I go from one scene to another? And it was ChatGPT's recommendation that I create a in-between piece of art that would kind of be partially one world and another, or it could just be a piece of graffiti, so it actually adds like a pause. So, and I love this quote by Banksy: "People say graffiti is ugly, irresponsible, and childish, but that's only if it's done properly." That's so Banksy. Big graffiti hero of mine. So we know we're back in conversations, and there's the dog, and then it cuts back to the jet scene. So because this story is about being out of time, it's a time traveling, I can kind of take a little bit of extra artistic permission to move through scenes in a variety of ways. And here it's just artwork, right? So we know they're still talking, or it cuts back to them talking. And it's just artwork. And, here I have hey, that's my boat. And there's a kind of a funny scene. And I will redraw these, right? I just put them in there as placeholders. Where do I want them to be? Move on. Here's in between scenes. Move on. And they're back to having conversations where it's really just a page of text. And some of this is really hand-drawn, literally using my track mouse or my track fingers. So it's really rough and raggedy, but all of a sudden I go oh, that's perfect. I like all of these. Even this one's not that great, but I like it. And then you can see the bird in there. So it's this really interesting thing of telling a story with words, telling something in pictures, where not to use pictures, where not to use words. Show it, don't say it. So here's where we see the God of War. I'm still working on this scene. This is where the four of these characters are gambling away the Earth's resources in the basement, and the God of War is off to the corner, um, drawing, and he's all drug. There's drugs, sex. I love this little kind of kid pornography, piece where the penis is blowing up. To me, this is one of the funnier drawings. Um, Dialogues between them. I really like this drawing where one man said, "There is a problem with the girl. What's her name? Birde." And all the men moan, the beast growls, and war lets out a big sigh. And there's the music for that one is "Sympathy for the Devil" with the Rolling Stones, which is a perfect song for that. And then going from one scene to the other, it's just the smoking cigar and a quote by Lao Tzu from not Lao Tzu, Santo, from The Art of War. Back to conversations where they're still talking about stuff, back to where Hiro's out and there's a storm. We've got the alien dream. There's Birde's doing this bomber squad with other graffiti artists because they're trying to get to this wall, and war is just pummeling them. And she finally gets to this wall, and boom, and puts graffiti on it, and boom, she's in another world. So, it's been interesting creating these, how do I go from one scene to another? And then this is this is really now, this used to be the military hospital, and then it burnt down, and I have a whole experience of being around it, and I photographed it before and after, and now it's a Target parking lot, like for real. And I photographed all this stuff over the years. So she's traveling through time now trying to find him. She knows where he is, but not when. So she goes so far back that she meets a Native American Indian woman. She moves around through it, gets to this place where it is a military hospital. She goes in and finds somebody else that says, you've got to come back in 30 years. So we're back to time traveling. And so these are just all these pieces of what's happening. Here's the submarine temple that I've talked about. See if I can move through these without it getting too blurry. I can't see my piece there. So here's that submarine temple thing that I've talked about. And I was recently doing this one, which is where all these ghosts show up. So I just roughly hand drew this figure, and I just really liked it. So I copied it and pasted it, and I will make it so that they're kind of all going towards this submarine. And I think I need to put another page in there. So back to the hospital. There's a dream. All of these where some of them I've redone because I kind of lost stuff in the gutter and redrew them. And, there's computer generated stuff. So, hand drawings. I really like this page. There's a point where the two of them just are having so much fun. I think I'm going to turn this one into a painting. Right now it doesn't work, but it still kind of gives me an idea of what's happening. And they get out into this, they find this great military graveyard, which is actually a true place, even around the world, but this one's in Arizona, and it's where all of our money that's going towards the military, where they build these incredibly expensive state-of-the-art things, they might not even be used, and they're out in this graveyard. And they used to give tours for it. They don't give it anymore. But if you think about it, all of the stuff that we have bought, aircraft carriers and all the planes and tanks and everything else, the moment it gets outdated or something like, makes it so that it can't be used because somebody else has better technology, it gets put somewhere. And so he finds this place, finds that Indian spirit again, dialogues about war and ghosts and why we bury people in military graveyards, which in my thought is that it's because we're actually afraid of what we've done to these young men and women as we've sent them off the war. We're actually afraid of death. So we keep it away from us. So he's back in a psych hospital. He's running through things. There's another scene where Birde shows up and almost finds him. And so he slowly starts going crazy. That's where we're at in this story. It's like I'm pushing him so that he has lost his what's real and not real. This woman keeps showing up. So we're back to Birde and Bernie talking, and then it goes into this scene where Hiro and Garuda and the Z4 are out, and they get caught up again in those same kind of jets, and things go bad, and someone gets hurt, and boom, we're back in the hospital again, and Birde finally finds him, and he's slumped all over. He's got a sketchbook in his hands, and she grabs him and pushes him into the corner, and she realizes that he's gone mad, and he's drooling, and he's just gone. And she basically grabs him and says, I will come back for you. I will never give up. And as she leaves, she sees him scribble a little bit, but then she leaves, and then we actually see that he actually draws a dog, because that's his connection to his dog. And then we got the intermission, which is for the next book. So there's where I'm at. Thanks again for everything.